So today I have the real honor and pleasure of having you, Johan Jörgensen, here. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine right now. It's a snowy morning in Stockholm, Sweden, but apart from that, it's fine.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Snow came very early this year. Now, Johan, can you please tell me a little bit about who are you?
Oh, so I'm a very old guy with a big gray beard that you don't see in the podcast. My background is basically I've been doing tech in Sweden since the beginning of the 90s and converted to food tech 2011 when I got some sort of a, let's call it I crash landed because I was bombarded by shitty business plans from left and right, and everything felt pretty meaningless. Another online casino, another dating app, and I decided this is so boring. I need to get out of the tech sector and go somewhere else. And then the question arises, where to? And I'd been interested in food for quite a while back then, and I said, oh, let's take a deep dive into food and see what I find. And I found this humongous, horrible system that kills the planet and everyone on it, and absolutely no tech and innovation anywhere to be seen, at least not to the extent that I'm used to or was used to from the tech sector. So it was just a magic cocktail, and it's this needs to happen. This is a transformation that's coming. The only question is when and where. And I took a secret vow to all my friends in tech and said, from now on, it's only about food tech, whatever that is. And I can confess that I nowadays regret using the term food tech because it leads people to believe that everything is about tech. You have to eat techie things, insects or new proteins coming out of labs and printers. But it's really about the transformation of the current food system into something that is healthy and sustainable. And to do that transformation, you need to use tech and innovation.
And with the food tech and the innovation, can you please tell me more about that? What that involve?
Well, if you look, it's kind of depending on where in the value chain or where in the history you start to look. But if we take a look at the current paradigm of the food sector on planet Earth, it's something that started in the Neolithic times, literally in the Stone Age. That's when we invented farming as we know it today, and precious little has happened since. We've just continued on the same trajectory for 11, 12,000 years. And the problem is that you can expand and intensify your farming as long as you have new land to expand to and intensify on. But we kind of ran out of planet a while ago, and there is no way that we can continue the current paradigm if we want to feed both the current population in a healthy and sustainable way, but also the future population on planet Earth. Because we're right now at an interesting point in history of man, and that is that we're at 8 billion people on Earth, and we're going to add 2 billion more in a situation where we have stretched natural resources and ample climate gases coming from the current way of producing food. So it's very hard to see us reaching both the climate targets that we have and sustain both the current and the coming humans on this world. So there needs to be a new way of producing food or nutrition to people. And that new way of doing it is it's a combination of the current way we're doing it, but in different ways, but also new methods for producing food and nutrition that is more climate friendly and brings more health to people. So it's a dire situation, but if we solve this within the next few decades, we have basically saved planet Earth for eternity, because the human numbers or the population of planet Earth is leveling out and will stay probably around 10 billion people, at least according to the UN predictions that we have. So if we solve it now for 10 billion people, we can just keep Fortress Earth forever. It's interesting.
Very much so. And you were mentioning as well that we need a new way of nutrition. What kind of nutrition are we heading at?
Oh, well, I think we're heading to first of all, nutritious food, which we don't have today. The concept of food there's this fantastic guy, Joshua Spodek in the US, who taught me a word once, and that is doof, food backwards. So if you apply the word food and doof when you go into a supermarket, you can identify food, and you can also identify doof, stuff that masks itself as food but really isn't. And if you walk through a supermarket, you quickly realize they sell more doof than food. And so proper nutrition, and that's of course less of the ultra processed shit that we've been accustomed to over the past few decades or 100 years, and more real food. But it's also going to be food that is good for you as an individual, your individual needs, and not just on a population level. That's one of the most dishonest things I've seen over the years, is that we're led to believe that everyone is supposed to eat the same thing. The recommendations pushed by the central authorities, for instance, in a pretty uncritical way. And what I need to eat is definitely something that's different from what you need to eat, or from what kids need to eat, or what you need to eat if you have a certain medical condition. And unless we realize that there are true differences between people and their dietary needs, I don't think we will ever achieve health in this world. You cannot just mend things with pills that you really destroyed through food.
And perhaps food as medicine as well, so we will eat food that will prevent disease in the future.
Well, if we eat food according to our needs, we won't need medicine. So I wouldn't even say that food as a medicine. I'd say, probably there is no need for medicine in the future if we just behave correctly.
And now, looking from an environmental viewpoint, we are obviously in a crisis right now from a sustainable aspect. What kind of foods do we need to implement for the planet to thrive again?
Well, if you take a look at what we've been doing over the years in order to bring new food to the table, it is expand and intensify, as we said before. So that's been the prevailing model, and that takes precious little account or precious little. Well, the current prevailing food system takes no consideration into mind when it comes to how we produce the food, because how we produce the food is the really climate. What really affects the climate. We talk a lot about food mileage, etc., but it's a minor part of the puzzle. It's how we produce things, and if we continue to produce things in the way we do today, with massive amounts of greenhouse gases vented out into the atmosphere, cows burping methane gases, you realize that food is probably one of the most significant contributors to the current climate crisis. And if we are supposed to feed a couple of more billion people on this planet in the same way that we do today, that means a massive increase in greenhouse gases and a massive continuation when it comes to the extraction of valuable nutrition from the world's soils. And mind you, over the last 40 years, we lost a third of all the arable land on planet Earth due to malpractices in farming. So basically, we've done slash and burn agriculture on a planetary level. So, the earth, the soil only functions if it's part of a regenerative system and not just an extractive system that we have today. So probably what we need to do is change our current food practices when it comes to farming, going towards more regenerative farming. But that will probably not, at least not in the short term, fix our needs for nutrition for every man, woman, and child on the planet. So we need to add to the current paradigm that will be conducted in a slightly better way. We need to add other ways of producing food, for instance, from side streams from the current food production system, or other side streams from cities, say say, the nutrition that comes in our sewage systems, that once upon a time was fed back to the earth again. Right now it's not. So so if we can use those side streams, for instance, through the help of fungi in order to produce new types of proteins, then I think we stand a pretty good chance of achieving a healthy and sustainable food system. If we shy away from new technology and say it's not food, then I think we might hit the brick wall, and we will have massive starvation again. And that's not something that we want to have on this earth again. I mean, we've seen it. And the green revolution of the 50s and 60s and 70s actually helped us produce a lot more food through the help of industrial methods. But that only works, that paradigm, when you have an unlimited planet to work with, and we don't. So we need to have a new paradigm. And I think it will come from technology, much in the same way as technology once upon a time helped the green revolution take hold and expand. And now we just need another form of green revolution to help us eat better. And that could be both in the form of wasting less. I mean, we waste a lot of food today. If we stopped wasting, it would be another ball game. But we need to have technology in order to help us waste less across the entire value chain, and not just as it's focused on right now. You have to eat everything on your plate, or everything. You must not waste at home, even though the home is a great place for waste. We also must realize that there is waste across the entire value chain that is extracting enormous amounts of nutrition from the planet every year that we then just throw away. And that type of overtaxation means that we have, less and less time to fix it. And I mean, some days I wake up and I feel pretty badly for the futures. Other days I can wake up and say, this is energizing, because I see so much of these technologies out there, and I really can see how we could shift the diet of planet Earth. But we still don't invest enough in it. We just keep these innovations in almost like in a cupboard, and say it's, oh, what a fun, interesting, quirky little way of producing proteins, but surely that can never take hold and become something big. And it's like, yeah, it has to. And you have to invest in those types of production methods in order to fix the big things. And I mean, if we could focus on new proteins in the same way as we focus on, say, green steel or the energy transformation, then I think we stand a chance. If we don't, and keep thinking that food is not possible to change, then I think we will lose. Simple as that.
Mm. And you were talking about innovation. Can you please tell me a little bit about what kind of innovations are you thinking of?
Well, there's of course a whole set of innovations, both when it comes to your own dietary needs, your individual needs. If I could know more about my needs, my nutritional needs, I could target myself with the right type of food. That would mean I would lose, I would waste less on myself when it comes to my, for instance, metabolic waste, which means that I eat too much of the wrong things, which means I pack myself, or I pad myself like a seal. So, which might be good if you live in Sweden if it's cold outside, but apart from that, probably my overweight will probably give me a heart condition or diabetes unless I change, right? And that is something I have in common with many people out there on this planet. So, and it's not individual; it's the food system that has made people overweight and obese and unhealthy from food. And that is a big part of the waste puzzle as well. It's not just the food that we waste, but human life, or human, option, our productivity, if you like, or our value, or the value of the lives we're living. So the quality of the lives we're living is also wasted by the current food system. So the waste exists on so many levels. So that is something we need to come to terms with. And then we need to produce food in new ways, for instance, like using microorganisms such as bacteria or algae or mushrooms, fungi, in order to grow food from, sources we didn't think food could come from. I mean, if you can take basically any type of waste product, put the fungi or another microorganism at work, and they will produce nutrition for you if you have the right fungi or microorganism. And unless we help ourselves by utilizing these tiny little bio factories, I think we're missing out on something that is fundamental when it comes to feeding ourselves in the future. And back to the question, really, what type of technology kind of depends also what type of problem you want to solve. One of the main messages that we have is that food is not what you think it is. Food doesn't have its biggest value on the plate. It's the effects of food that you need to have in mind. The effects on our current food production or food consumption on the planet or on our health. Just that we have is that the value of food doesn't lie on your plate. That's not the main value. The value of food, the true value of food, lies in the effects of food. That means the effects of food or our food production system on the climate or on our health or even on our future productivity or quality of life. And unless we start to treat those values properly and address them, I don't think we can fix the food system, because it is inherently a system that doesn't live in a market economy due to the fact that we don't take externalities into account. There was this study from the Rockefeller Foundation from the other year that stated that $1 trillion in food spend in the US is matched by $1 trillion in healthcare spend due to that food, and $1 trillion in a negative effect on the environment. So that food is really 3 times as expensive as we think it is. And that means that we need to think about what we want to achieve with food, and not just feeding people short term. They should be long term healthy on a healthy planet, and long term productive, and long term happy. And that's when I think we can finally tune this food system into something else than we have today, because we want to achieve something besides just filling our bellies for the next half hour or an hour. There's something more to food that we haven't really thought about.
Very interesting. And I think in terms of brands as well, so when you go to the supermarket and you see the same brands all over, on and off, it's always the same brands pretty much. How does that affect us on a psychological viewpoint? Because I think we as human beings are curious and want to try new things and experience new flavors. Don't you think we need lots of new brands, smaller brands?
I could be one thing. I think most of all, I think we need to challenge the notion that the current food value chain is the pinnacle of human ingenuity, and that is the optimal way of doing it. So we have the current food value chain because we don't take into account the other costs of the food system, such as for the climate or individual health. We just scaled a part of the food system with very, very efficient scaling methods, economic methods, industrial methods. And I mean, today the global food system pushes farmers to produce 12 plants and 5 animals, and then they produce food out or something called food or doof out of that, and then they push it to us consumers. So we don't have a free choice. We buy what people sell us or choose to sell us, and those things doesn't necessarily have to be the best for our health or the planetary health. We need an entirely new food value chain and the food system.
And from a technological viewpoint, where do you think the next step is to break down this, the situation we are in? Where do we start?
I think we should start with our false images of food, what food is. And we've been fed images of what food is for ages and ages and ages. So food today is a, golden, field of gold where the sun sets over a field of barley. Is that beautiful? Well, maybe from an aesthetic perspective, but if you look at it, it's a bloody monoculture. Nothing else lives there. It's a desert. Same goes for our forests. They're just plantations of pine trees these days up in the Nordics. I think there is, I no, it's such an abysmal small percentage of real forest that is left. But we still think this pine plantation is a forest, which is also a false image, or a happy little piglet in the arms of a farmer. Piglets aren't happy. Pigs don't live happy lives. Neither do cows or sheep or goats or any of the other mammals that we raise for our for dinner. That's the majority of everything that lives on planet Earth in terms of weight is food for us. And if you're an animal today, chances are you're being born into captivity with a death penalty at the end of your life. So it's really a disgusting system that we've built. And I mean, unless we see it for what it is, or how it affects us, our health and climate, unless we see those or choose to see those pictures, I don't think there will be a will to change. But if we truly see these images, the new or the true images of food, then I think people will start to question the current system and the images they're fed with, and perhaps change their ways of behavior a bit. But I think it's not enough to change the images. I think we also need to change the system itself. And one of the questions I have to many people is if they can cook. And most often they can't, right? And in Sweden, I think 70% of the population doesn't like to cook. And they have 10 recipes that they circulate round and round and round. I don't say that it is the same case everywhere, but in many places that is the case. So you have the same old shit that you cook most often from it's ready-made meatballs with ready-made pasta, and you mix those together and pour ketchup on top of that. That would be a typical Swedish dinner. It's for anyone who is interested in food, this is of course horrible, right? But we need to realize that is the situation for most people. So shall we let people cook in the future, or shall we try and fix their nutrition in other ways? If that is large kitchens or restaurants, or another way where pros with the best hardware and the best intentions can cook healthy, nutritious, and delicious meals for all of us. And perhaps I don't know, perhaps we should have the access to food in the same way, the social contract as we have in many places, at least around the world, we have healthcare and free school. Perhaps we should have free food as well. That might not be such a bad idea.
Yeah. And how about the generation in the future? Do you see they turning more towards veganism and vegetarians, the youth?
Yeah, they're at least going flexitarians, which means that they're cutting down on especially red meat. So and trying to eat more plant-based. That is, of course, a very encouraging direction. I think that's the only hope, that the next generation doesn't continue doing the same mistakes as the previous generations. So there's potential for a shift, definitely, but it has to be the next generation. And I think when we talk about food system and building food system, it's imperative that we don't try to transfer our bad food habits, our bad food system onto the next generation, but instead try and refigure the food system in a way that so that a next generation food system becomes a food system for the next generation and their needs and goals and aspirations. And that's going to be a big challenge, because the current food system, it's a mighty monster. And it's filled with a strong immune system and lobbyists and privileges that they want to retain. And I can understand why. I mean, it's a food system that they've built within the parameters that were given to them, and the political framework that we all agreed upon, or mostly agreed upon, at least in democratic countries. And unless we fix the conditions for the food system itself, the political framework around it, this system won't be able to change. So in all essence, this is not a question of economics, it's a question of policy. And there I fear a little bit more, because I see very few leaders in this world understanding food and wanting to change food. This is a big sector, and messing with that's dangerous. That can ruin a political career.
Mm. Have you got any insights into the larger corporations, how they see the problem with food currently? Are they taking responsibility? Are they sort of trying to resolve the issues we have? Have you
Nope.
got any information about that?
Nope, they're not. I mean, like you have to realize that the food system is the least innovative system we have on the planet. In general terms, they pour, I think it is 0.2% of their turnover into research and development, and that's almost exclusively new product developments, like new flavors of ice cream, another packaging for Coke, or that type of innovation. And that's not innovation in my book, it's product development. So so they don't really know anything about innovation to the extent that other sectors know about innovation, which means it's super hard for them to engage with it. And I think one of the biggest problems for them, or the biggest challenges for them going forward, is to understand innovation on a ownership level, on the board level, and perhaps also on the leadership level, the C-suite. And unless they understand and act on innovation, I fear they will be left behind. And perhaps that is the necessary transformation that we need. The old uninnovative food sector gets smashed by the new and innovative food sector. Perhaps that's the way it needs to go. But I would like really the old guard, the ones that we already have, become more innovative and become champions of health and sustainability, because that would both enable their survival, but also mean that they could put their huge resources and distribution power into this transformation. And that would be the fastest way forward.
Mm. What has been your biggest fear in your life?
Sorry, my biggest
Fear.
fear. Oh, my biggest fear. Yes. My biggest fear is that I can clearly see a future that is healthy and sustainable. I think I know, and many know, how we could fix this food system and turn it something differently. But my biggest fear is that we don't have the time necessary to arrive at that. We don't need to invent more things. We just need to implement what we already know. And that means policy changes, that means huge investments and a new mindset. But unless people want to, or risk, or invest in, or run with, we won't be able to fix this.
And what kind of policy changes are we talking about?
I think the most important one is to make the true costs of the food system visible. If we have a food system that costs as much in negative health effects and in negative environmental effects that we put on food itself, unless we see that, I don't think there will be any chance that we can fix it. Costs need to reflect the true costs to society, and unless soda companies or candy manufacturers or whatever people out there are serving bad food or selling bad foods, unless they are forced to pay the full price for what they're doing, I don't think there's any chance. I mean, in environmental law, there is a central fundamental principle called polluter pays. In the food world, we don't have anything like that, and we would need to implement something like that pretty rapidly. And I think we also need to take away all the subsidies to the bad parts of the food system. We cannot continue to subsidize meat. We cannot continue to subsidize humongous fields of monocultures because it's killing biodiversity. So we need to subsidize instead, if we want to, the future food production that is beneficial to man and planet. If we could pour as much subsidies into that as we pour subsidies into the old one, then I think we stand a chance. But again, it's a huge system that needs to be shifted, and there are pretty many people with huge privileges that they want to retain. And so this is going to be a political fight.
And with that, you're talking about profits, tax money, you know, perhaps changing the whole value system. So, you know, do not run for profits, change your values, you know, health, well-being, justice.
I think you should run for profit. I think the market economy is a great system, and you know, if you're a farmer, if you're a small farmer or a big farmer, like you deserve your profits if you do things that are good for us and the planet. You know, be my guests, be profitable, benefit from it. But if you produce shit that destroys the planet and humans, you should be punished for that. And that's, you know, just basic functionality of any type of sound economy. So it's I mean, like, these farmers, they're not essentially bad people. They just operate within the system parameters of today. And we just need to make sure that those parameters are guiding us in the right directions. They're not today.
So where do you hope we are in 10 years from now?
I hope we eat more plant-based. I hope we have a more of a true cost system. I hope we have actually a bunch, you know, I'm a free market libertarian economist, or liberal economist rather, and I think if we deploy what we know when it comes to taxes, or to shine a light on the true costs of society for the current food system, and shine a light on the values we could build through another form of system, then I hope we will have the change power that we need. So I'm some days I'm pretty optimistic, other days I'm super pessimistic about the situation. Because we need leadership, political leadership here. And without that, we will fail. And the question is if there is a new generation of politicians who would like to take this question and run with it. Because there are so many things that we can change in a relatively easy fashion, and fix this. But unless we want to, there's no chance.
And why do you think there aren't any political restrictions? Why isn't that? Why hasn't that been implemented?
Because as of now, it seems like the food system is functioning. Again, back to a bad picture we have of food. People, yeah, well, you can go to the supermarket. Apparently there is food in the supermarket. So why bother changing something that apparently works? And that is back to the issue of us not seeing the entire price that we pay for food today, or our current food system. If we could shine the light and make this system more transparent, I think we would have politicians standing up and say, this is not okay. I mean, I think it has been a slow march, but now I think we have sugar taxes in over 90 countries around the world. We didn't have that a few years ago. It's because people suddenly saw sugar for what it is, an evil. And but it's not just about sugar. There are so many other things that are evil too, or wrong in the system and indirectly subsidized. And if we could just take a look at what we have out there and say, is it okay to have cheap factory meat? Is what is the benefit of that, and what are the costs for it? If we could be true to ourselves, analyzing what we allow out there, to call it, say, food, then I think we have a chance of implementing those transformational policy changes that we need to implement. But it's a big system, right? It's an extremely powerful lobby. And I think what we need to have probably is a vision that is a long-term vision, 10, 20 years from now, instead of 20 years from now, say, then this is the system that we're going to have. and which means that we're right from now and onwards going to take small steps every year towards that system, which will enable you to transform gradually over a long period of time, rather than being forced tomorrow to face a revolution. But unless we take that long-term approach, we will need to have a revolution, a true revolution, 10 or 20 years from now. And that's going to hurt a hell of a lot. So I prefer this slightly, gradual development to the more revolutionary development. I think it's a sounder way of moving forward, even though I some days could say, fuck this value chain, let's just burn it down and build something. But the pain of throwing something out is so great before you have something that functions in its place. So no, it's not a smart way to do it.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we round up?
I think there is the central message that food is the value of food does not lie on your plate, but rather in the effects. I think that's the predominant realization I'd like to have people arrive at.
Thank you so much, Johan. It's been super informative and very eye-opening to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.